And welcome back to Music Free Static. I hope you're having a fabulous day. And the 4th of July is right around the corner. And with it comes America's 250th birthday. Okay, now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot to, Europe or something, but it's still a rather significant milestone. And I've been kind of looking forward to it because honestly, I love my country. I love the American theory, okay? And I'm going to be getting into a bunch of stuff about America, about the founding, about a bunch of stuff. I'm going to end up dipping into the political a little bit. So this is your warning. I'm still not going to go raging, oh, this person or this person or this person. I don't like doing that. I'm not going to do that. But I will be talking politics to some extent. So if you are not into that, and I totally get it, okay? I totally get it. Feel free to click off. But as I've been thinking about America over the last, it's definitely over the last several months, as we've been spinning up towards the 250th. And I know there's some semi-cinquentennial or something. Maybe that's what the word is. I don't know. We're not. No. Okay. Anyway, but as I've been thinking about that over the last few months, I think back about the things I really love about, again, the American theory, the American ideals that surrounded the founding, and and actually led to the framing of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which was adopted later. And I love living in a country without royalty, without an aristocracy. It annoys me that people keep trying to impose an aristocracy, right? It's like, oh yeah, it was like the Kennedys, apparently. I fortunately missed this, but it was like you had JFK and then Robert F. Kennedy, and all of these different Kennedys, right? It's like, oh yeah, this is Camelot, this is a kingdom, it's like, no, that's not true, right? And you see that with, and it's not just politicians, you see it with athletes and movie stars and singers, and it's like, yeah, they're just better than everyone. That's just not how this works, okay? I love living in a country where where everybody, at least on paper, is equal under the law, okay? You can argue about whether that's true in practice, and I would actually probably agree that that's not, but it's, as an aspirational principle, I absolutely love it. I love that it should be true, okay? The laws are written that way. But we are a nation of humans, and it turns out humans are not perfect, okay? And therefore, anything they do is not perfect. And that includes running a country, right? And everything from the ground up. Humans are just imperfect. But I love that, at least in principle, everyone is equal under the law. I love being in a country where a person can succeed without having to ask permission. Okay, that is becoming less true, especially in states like California, Colorado, New York, right? But in theory, a person shouldn't have to ask permission to do something awesome, right? They should be able to do it, as long as they're not infringing upon the rights of others. Yeah, go be awesome. I love that has been part of the American ideal for more than 250 years. That's been a thing for a long time. And I love that we, at the heart of the American system, there was a belief that you can just go live your own life the way you see fit, as long as you don't interfere with the rights of others, right? As long as I'm not going to take the life, liberty, or property of my neighbors, I can just kind of go about and do my own thing, right? that has been such a huge part of the American system. And the idea that, hey, as long as I'm, as long as I'm chill, I know my neighbors can go do whatever they want as long as they're not infringing on my rights. And we can all get along. And it doesn't matter if we're the same political party or different parties or different religions or different cultures or anything. We can go do our own thing as long as we're not infringing on each other's rights. It doesn't matter. And that is awesome. That is so awesome. Where it fails so more often than I'd like to admit is when people try to inflict their lives on others. And that's not what was supposed to be part of what America is. Okay, it's just not. Okay. And I know there are people like, oh, you don't believe X, Y, or Z, we're going to inflict it upon you. No, yes, I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We send missionaries out in America as well. Yep, absolutely. And yes, they will knock on doors and want to share the message of the gospel. But they're not forcing it on people. If you don't want to listen, you can tell them no, and they will leave. And being a jerk about it doesn't make them leave any better. Just say, no, thank you, I'm good. And they'll leave, right? That's all it takes, right? Yes, it's an offer. It's not a mandate. And it's so sad that so many people, when they get into government, want to mandate beliefs. And that runs so contrary to what we have established. And I'll be the first to admit, America's not perfect. It's never been perfect. Okay. Was it exceptional? Yes, in that it was an exception. The United States overthrew a monarchy and set up not another monarchy, but a government based off of individuals. They set up a republic. They set up a system with checks and balances to limit governmental power. Did it work? Yeah, for the most part. Has it gotten corrupted? Yes, it absolutely has. And yes, it wasn't perfect. Compromises were made. The Constitution was the first step in abolishing slavery, but it didn't do it. Okay? That was part of the compromise to form the government. And it took a lot of years and a lot of lives to correct that. And it sucks. But eventually, it did. And we're still living with the repercussions of it. Partly because some people just won't let it die. And partly because, some of those scars are deep. And that's fair. That is fair. And like I said, America is not perfect, right? It was... There were definitely a lot of Americans that were saying, no, slavery sucks. But we want to remain a country united. We will be the United States of America. And so we are going to make some compromises here. Okay. And it sucks, right? But again, people aren't perfect. We make mistakes. Sometimes we have to compromise. It's the nature of being people. And hopefully you can then learn from those mistakes and repent and all of that stuff, right? It's one of the reasons why repentance is such an important principle in Christianity. It's because we know we're going to screw up. God knows we're going to screw up, right? Our Heavenly Father, yes, you read in the scriptures, be ye perfect. But it's like, he doesn't expect you to be perfect immediately. He expects you to be perfect eventually. He knows you're going to screw up. And it's going to take time. You're going to have to repent. And that means overcoming what you've done, learning from your mistakes. Trying to repair harms if that's possible, right? But it doesn't mean that the fact that a person isn't perfect doesn't mean they're a failure, right? The fact that a country isn't perfect doesn't mean it's a failure. The fact that a country doesn't always live up to its ideals doesn't make it a failure. right? And America, the United States of America, has for the longest time actually lived most of its ideals, but it's never been perfect, right? And I'm not going to sit here and blow sunshine up your whatever and claim that it always was, okay? But it saddens me when I sit and I look and I studied what they were thinking, okay? When they wrote the Constitution, when they wrote their papers and wrote their reasons for revolting against the most powerful nation in the world. The British Empire was the superpower. Was it challenged by France? Yes. But they were dominant. And America was not. Right? The burgeoning colonies were not strong. But when they sat down and the committee of Jefferson and Adams and Franklin and man, forgot the other two, sadly, who were on the committee, who wrote the draft of the Declaration of Independence. And when they sat down, and I think mostly it was Jefferson who wrote it, but it's not like he wrote it in isolation, as you often see. But when they sat down and they wrote that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they didn't write that because they thought it was false. And yeah, Jefferson was a slave owner. Okay, absolutely, right? He is an imperfect man, and while he eventually freed his slaves, it was on his deathbed. I think it was in his will. Okay, and said Jefferson wasn't perfect, but you read that and realize that this is a culture shift. Okay, that all men are created equal is absolutely contrary to everything they'd come out of under England, under France. Most of the European powers were monarchies, where they had a level of royalty and aristocracy that was just that just assumed that people were better because of the family they were born into. And that is just not true. And this was a huge step. And then the next step in the Declaration, the next sentence, is that to secure these rights, those rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, those unalienable rights, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. This was a huge shift. This turned government on its head. It went from being, we are governed by a king because the king is ordained of God, or just because we think their family has been important. They've been kings forever. That's not cool, man. That's not right. A person is not better because of the family they were born into. Your family might be amazing. It probably is. But that doesn't make you superior to somebody. At least in a you should run the country sort of way. And instead they flipped it and said, no, it's the governed. It's the people who are instituting the government. It's the people who are doing things. It is a bottom up. Government should be run as close to the people as possible, because it is the people who are governing, right? That's why when the federalist system of government that we have now under the Constitution was set up, it's why the states were to be autonomous governments in and of themselves, and not ruled by the government in, at the time, I think it was Philadelphia, right? It's just, and now it's Washington, D.C. The idea was that we need to have governments closer to the people. Okay. In a modern sense, the European Union pretends to have this model where instead of states, you have countries. You have France and Germany and Spain and all of this stuff, right? Under a federal government, the European Union. The difference is that the European Union isn't elected. They're appointed by the governments of their respective countries. But it's the same idea, is that in the United States, the states would be autonomous. And then heck, it wasn't until years later that the Supreme Court ruled that actually the Bill of Rights that's in the federal Constitution doesn't just limit the federal government, it also limits state governments, which was a little bit of a breach of that federalist system. But the Bill of Rights is so important. So many of the freedoms that we have in the United States are based off of the Bill of Rights, right? The ability to associate with anybody you choose, the establishment or the lack of establishment of a state religion, the ability to anyone to worship who and how and where they may, was actually a massive shift. It was the first step into a secular, pluralistic government, and was a great one. Okay, and while I personally believe, like I said, I am a member of a church. I am Christian. I believe in God, the eternal Father, and Jesus Christ, and I go to church and I do all this stuff. I believe that this is the right thing, and that honestly more people would benefit were they believers and followers of Christ. But people are free to choose their own thing, right? And again, it goes back to, as long as we're not forcing others to live our beliefs, right, we could all get along. But that's not where we're at. And it saddens me that there are so many people who would usurp those principles of individual liberty, those rights to assemble and to speak and to own weapons and to be free from unlawful search and seizure, all of that stuff, right? Those individual rights. And people want to just throw those out. Throw out those things that are so fundamental to what made America amazing. Okay? Beyond great. America was awesome. It was worthy of awe. But people want to throw out those blessings of liberty, those unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in favor of government control of people's lives through various government programs. Okay? And sometimes they want to call it by a friendly name. We'll call it socialism, because being social is good and helping people is good and socialism is great. But it doesn't matter whether you call it socialism or you call it fascism or you call it communism. It all amounts to the same thing. A long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It doesn't matter if you come from what they illogically call the right and the left. Really, it's become a horseshoe. They are the same thing. They both point towards tyranny. The idea that we are going to use government programs to try to control you. It's horrific. It is such a violation of those principles. And you go through and you read the Declaration of Independence, and it lays out all of these reasons why those early Americans thought it right to revolt, to literally revolt, right? We're not talking about a peaceful petition or something. We're talking armed combat in the streets and in the fields, and people who literally gave up their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors, right? And I can't help but look at some of that list and realize that so many of the things they rebelled against are what we're seeing today. And it's been ongoing, right? It's not just Republicans, and it's not just Democrats. it has been a long train of abuses and usurpations. And it saddens me. And I think back to the founding principles, the principles that led to the Virginia Plan that became the Constitution of the United States, to the principles that became the Bill of Rights, which is so unique amongst, especially at the time, was unique amongst the nations of the world. And in theory, some of those principles have spread abroad, but then there's some really basic ones, basic rights, the ability to, the right to free speech, right? The ability to say what you like. Yes, it might be hateful. It might be horrible. Let's face it. There are people that say some pretty horrible things, okay? Under the American system, if someone says pretty horrible things, you also kind of had there was this concept of fighting words, and if you clocked somebody in the face after they said those horrible things, people would sort of understand that. But now you can go to prison in the United Kingdom for saying something mean on X, right? If you criticize a politician in Germany, you could go to jail, right? That's not freedom. That's fear. And it's codified in the United States Constitution. We have these rights. I mean, I just read in Colorado, there's a law that passed, and the legislature backed off on it because it realized they were stupid. But the fact that they did it in the first place was wrong, but shows that those principles of individual liberty are under attack. So they passed a law that says if you wish to be a lawyer in Colorado, you must not take cases or support any federal immigration cases, which is 100% a violation of a lawyer's First Amendment rights to the ability to speak what they want, right? This is compelled speech, right? They're being forced to support something they may or may not actually support personally, and it deprives people of legal representation because you have to pledge under oath not to support something. Right? That is a huge violation. That is a huge First Amendment violation. And it's just, oh yeah, Colorado just decided to do this. And you've got a bunch of people out there who want to police speech in this way. And yes, I understand where they're coming from in some ways. Okay? People are jerks on the internet. People are vile sometimes. Yes, people lie. The reality is, once you start trying to force people to say what you want them to say, you build resentment. You build revolutionaries. And yes, our nation was founded on revolutionaries. And I would rather not see a second American Revolution. I really don't. Okay? Or a third, if you want to count the American Civil War, right? Which was, in fact, a revolution. The fact that the nation reformed after that is impressive in a lot of ways, but it cost a lot of lives to get there. And I don't want to see that again. We shouldn't have to see that again. If we can embrace those principles from those early years, and yes, they're not perfect. I'm not saying we go back and embrace slavery. That was stupid. Nobody should live as a slave. But I'm not going to say that's a uniquely American thing either. Those that do are lying to you. Because you can go back and look at, the Bible talks about slavery going back, to Egypt and beyond, right? I mean, this is not a modern, unique thing, okay? It's horrible. It's horrific. I don't know that I could say it any stronger. It is a horrific practice. I hate that it's part of the history of my country. I also hate that it was imposed upon us, right? It's not like America was a country when the first slaves were brought over, right? They were brought over under as we were British colonies, right? The French weren't exactly bringing people with promises of freedom when they were bringing them to some of the islands in the Caribbean, right? I mean, just the Spanish were not right immune from all of this. Okay, it's I hate that it's part of my history. Okay, but those ideals that made it into the Declaration, the Constitution, all of the thinking behind it, all of those thoughts of people are awesome, right? People can be amazing. Yes, people suck, and this is why we built a government that's supposed to provide checks and balances, so that we don't have one person who just goes off the deep end and does random things. Okay, I'm not gonna. I'm. It's too easy to point. Oh yeah, obviously he's talking about Trump. Yes, I could be. Could also be talking about Obama. We're talking about Biden. We're talking about Bush. Either of them, right? I could be talking about Clinton. Right? It doesn't matter. President is not supposed to be all powerful. That's the whole point. That is why the Constitution was written, to push the power of government down, away from individuals, so we don't have one person trying to be a king, or even 538 people trying to be dictators, right? It's like, no, let's get these governments closer to the people. And sometimes it has problems, and sometimes it works great, because it turns out people are not perfect, and I believe that it is a trait of the natural man, when they start to get a little bit of power, to want to crave more, and then to want to inflict their views upon others. And the idea is that the Republican form of government, the form of a republic, okay, is supposed to minimize that. And unfortunately, we get political parties who justify anything their team does, right? You can have a party that the party stands up as we believe all women. We will, anytime a woman says she was attacked, we have to believe her, right? All of this. And then as soon as somebody in their party might have a chance to win an election, is accused, and there is of some sort of impropriety, serious impropriety, abuse, and other things. I said, oh yeah, no, we don't believe that, right? It's not a case of believing all women. It's believing all women who accuse our political opponents. That's not liberty. That's not freedom. That's not people wanting to protect the rights and of people. That's a sign of people want power. And so yeah, it saddens me to see so much of what has become of American politics and the divisiveness that has come from it. But I think back to those principles that say John Adams and Thomas Jefferson did not like each other. And if you want to put it in modern terms, and actually even back in the 1790s, when Adams becomes president and Jefferson is his vice president. Remember, at the time, under the Constitution, the winner of the presidential election became president, and the runner-up became the vice president. They changed that rather quickly and realized that doesn't work. Okay, but Jefferson and Adams did not get on. At points, I would actually probably honestly and truthfully say that they hated each other. But they were brothers in a revolution. They both loved freedom. They didn't they didn't agree on how to actually implement it once they had it. Jefferson sided more on the side of the strictly limited government. In fact, when he was president and they signed Louisiana Purchase, he was wondering do we actually have to amend the Constitution to allow this, right? Adams was more of believed more in a centralized government, and based off of my readings, and I could be mistaken, but based off of my readings, Adams, I think, was more of the I don't want to say he's more of a, in the eyes, wanted a monarchy. I think he believed a monarchy was inevitable. But despite that, they were able to work together to overthrow a despotic government, or at least a government that acted despotically towards the American colonies. And eventually, yes, the two of them were able to reconcile late in life and rekindle a friendship that they had formed somewhat during those days of the American Revolution. And we should be able to do that, right? We should be able to sit down, regardless of our political party, regardless of our political beliefs, and sit down and be able to and enjoy a barbecue together, right? We should be able to worship together. We should be able to enjoy watching our kids play, sports, or in a recital, or just out at the playground playing together. We should be able to be friends, because we should be able to just live our own lives and not interfere with the lives of others. That was the American promise. The American dream, that you can work to do something and make something of yourself and make something amazing. And I don't mean necessarily making a giant corporation that generates a huge amount of wealth. Yes, absolutely, that is awesome. But the ability to just, you know what? I don't want to work in a salt mine. Instead, I have an idea for anything, and some invention. And maybe you don't become ridiculously rich, but it's what you want to do, and you go do it. And you become rich because it enriches your life. That is the American dream for me. This was, for me, the promise of America. And while I don't think that I don't think the American politics are helping the American dream to thrive. I look at those promises that were made and sealed with the blood of patriots on the fields of Concord and Lexington, and realize that, yes, there is an aspirational ideal. There's something we should be aspiring to based off of the principles found in the Declaration of Independence, codified in the Constitution of the United States, and principles that we can and should hold to. I think things would be better if we did. And I look at that and it's like, I want this. And there are some states that really support that, and there are some that don't, and they don't split nicely on red state and blue state lines. Okay, that's not. I wish that were the. I wish that were the case. It's easy to pick teams, right? No, it's not. That's not the world we live in. Okay, it's part of the reasons I got out of my life as a political activist. It's part of the reason I stopped dealing with political parties. It's why there are sometimes I don't vote, because I cannot support any of the candidates that are on my ballot, right? So I'm not going to pick the lesser of the evils. Okay, that's just, I can't. If I can't support them, I can't vote for them, right? So I think I could get into things that I think could change, but I think the best thing that we could do as Americans is stop playing with the parties. Stop cheerleading for a candidate because they have an R or a D after their name. Stop vilifying your neighbors because they voted for a candidate you disagreed with. And let's come together by allowing each other to live our own lives, and quit writing laws that force your views on somebody else. That would be lovely. That would be amazing. But that's what I would love to see. But the fact that we're not there, the fact that we're not perfect, doesn't make me hate America. It doesn't make me ashamed to be an American. The fact that a president, current or past or whatever, has done something that makes me cringe doesn't make me ashamed to be an American. And so here we are at the 250th anniversary of America. And here I raise my music-free gaming tumbler to America and wish you a happy birthday. And here's to another glorious 250 years of freedom and liberty. And until next time, be excellent to each other. And this is Music Free Static signing off.